Lesson time. JustProfessor here. You assume everyone thinks the way you think. You assume everyone experiences the world the way you experience it. You assume if something is easy for you, it's easy for everyone. But you're completely wrong, and this assumption is destroying your ability to understand other people and communicate with them effectively. Think about something that seems obvious and natural to you. Maybe visualizing things in your mind, or thinking in words, or remembering what you ate yesterday. You probably assume everyone does this the same way you do. But here's a shocking fact. Some people can't visualize images in their mind at all. Some people don't think in words. Some people have no internal monologue. Your experience of thinking and perceiving is not universal, but you've been assuming it is your whole life. This is the typical mind fallacy, and it's making you fundamentally misunderstand how different people's minds actually are. The typical mind fallacy is when you assume other people's minds work basically the same as yours. You think your thought processes, perceptions, motivations, and experiences are typical, and that everyone else is similar with just minor differences. You use your own mind as the default template for understanding all minds. But actually, there's huge variation in how people think and experience the world that you're completely blind to. This happens because you only have direct access to your own consciousness. You can't experience anyone else's thoughts or perceptions directly. So your brain assumes other people's inner experiences are similar to yours. It's the only reference point you have. You project your own mental processes onto others and assume that's what's happening in their heads, too. The problem is, this makes you unable to understand or communicate with people whose minds work differently from yours. You give advice that doesn't work because it assumes people think like you. You judge people for things that are genuinely difficult for them, but easy for you. You explain things in ways that make sense to your brain, but not to theirs. The typical mind fallacy creates a massive barrier to genuine understanding and empathy. Let me show you how different minds actually are. Mental imagery is a perfect example. Most people can close their eyes and visualize an apple. They see a picture in their mind. But some people have aphantasia. They can't visualize anything at all. When you tell them to picture an apple, they understand the concept of an apple but see nothing. No image forms in their mind. If you can visualize, you probably assumed everyone could until just now. That's typical mind fallacy, or the opposite extreme. Some people have hyperphantasia where mental images are incredibly vivid, almost like hallucinations. If you're average at visualization, you might not realize some people experience mental imagery way more intensely than you do. Internal monologue is another huge one. Many people think in a constant stream of words in their head. They hear themselves talking internally almost all the time, but some people don't have this at all. Their thoughts are more like wordless concepts and feelings. They don't hear a voice narrating their thoughts. If you have an internal monologue, you probably assumed everyone did. If you don't have one, you might be shocked that other people hear words in their head constantly. Pain tolerance varies enormously. Something that's mildly uncomfortable to you might be agony to someone else. Or something you find painful might barely register to someone with higher pain tolerance. But typical mind fallacy makes you think your pain threshold is normal and judge others accordingly. You might think someone is being dramatic about pain when actually they're experiencing something genuinely more intense than you would in the same situation. Motivation and willpower work totally differently for different people. Some people can just decide to do something and do it. Others struggle intensely with executive function and making themselves do things even when they want to. If you have strong willpower, typical mind fallacy makes you think people who struggle are just not trying hard enough. You don't realize their brains genuinely work differently in terms of impulse control and self-regulation. Emotional experiences vary wildly. Some people feel emotions very intensely. Others feel them more mildly. Some people process emotions quickly. Others need a long time. If you process emotions one way, typical mind fallacy makes you assume everyone does. You might think someone is cold because they don't show emotion the way you do, when actually they're just processing internally. Memory capabilities are hugely different. Some people have amazing memory and can recall detailed information from years ago. Others have poor memory and struggle to remember things from last week. If you have good memory, you might not realize how genuinely difficult it is for some people to remember things that seem basic to you. You might think they're not paying attention when actually their memory just doesn't encode or retrieve information the same way yours does. Learning styles and thinking patterns are completely different across people. Some people think very logically and linearly. Others think in associations and patterns. Some people need to understand the big picture first. Others need to build up from details. If you teach or explain things the way that works for your brain, typical mind fallacy makes you assume that's the best way. But it might be completely wrong for someone whose mind works differently. Social needs vary enormously. Introverts genuinely need alone time to recharge. It's not antisocial. Their brains actually work differently. Extroverts genuinely gain energy from social interaction. If you're one type, typical mind fallacy makes you not understand the other type. Extroverts think introverts are unfriendly. Introverts think extroverts are exhausting. Both are projecting their own social needs. Sensory processing differences are huge. Some people are hypersensitive to sounds, lights, textures. Things that don't bother you at all might be overwhelming to them. Some people are hyposensitive and need more stimulation. Typical mind fallacy makes you think your sensory experience is normal and others are just complaining or being difficult. So, how do you overcome the typical mind fallacy? How do you understand that minds work differently? First, actively question your assumptions. When you think, "Why doesn't everyone just do X?" Or, "How can someone not understand why?" Stop and consider that maybe their brain genuinely works differently from yours. What's easy for you might be hard for them for neurological reasons, not character flaws. Second, ask people about their actual experiences instead of assuming. Ask someone how they think, how they experience things, what's easy or hard for them. You'll discover variation you never imagined. Don't just project your own experiences onto them. Third, believe people when they describe experiences different from yours. If someone says they can't visualize images or they don't have an internal monologue, don't assume they're lying or confused. They're describing their actual experience, which is different from yours. Fourth, recognize that just is often a sign of typical mind fallacy. Just focus. Just remember. Just decide. Just relax. These phrases assume mental processes are the same for everyone and equally easy. They're usually wrong. Fifth, be humble about your own experience. Your mind is not the default. It's one variation among many. What feels normal and obvious to you is actually specific to how your particular brain works. Sixth, learn about neurodiversity. Read about different ways brains can work. ADHD, autism, dyslexia, aphantasia, different personality types. The more you learn about variation, the more you realize how wrong typical mind assumptions are. Seventh, tailor your communication and teaching to individuals. Don't assume one explanation or approach works for everyone. Ask what makes sense to them. Be willing to try completely different approaches based on how their mind actually works. The typical mind fallacy is making you assume your inner experience is universal when actually there's massive variation in how people think, perceive, feel, and process information. You've been projecting your mind onto everyone else and missing how genuinely different their experiences are. This affects everything: how you teach, how you communicate, how you judge others, how you give advice, how you empathize. When you assume everyone's mind works like yours, you fundamentally misunderstand them. You think people are lazy when actually they have different executive function. You think they're not trying when actually they're working against different brain wiring. You think they're difficult when actually they're just processing the world differently. Understanding that the typical mind fallacy is wrong opens up real empathy and communication. Instead of assuming and judging, you can ask and understand. Instead of one-size-fits-all approaches, you can adapt to how someone's mind actually works. Instead of projecting your experience, you can recognize that others' experiences might be completely different. Some people literally cannot do things that are effortless for you, and vice versa. Not because of willpower or character, but because of how their brains are wired. Your internal experience, whether that's visualization, internal monologue, emotional intensity, motivation, memory, sensory processing, is not everyone's internal experience. The next time you find yourself thinking, "Why can't they just?" or "How can anyone not?" remember the typical mind fallacy. Your just might be genuinely impossible for someone whose mind works differently. Your obviously might not be obvious at all to a different type of brain. Stop using your mind as the template for all minds. Start recognizing that minds are vastly more different than you've been assuming. That recognition is the foundation of real understanding and effective communication with the full diversity of people you'll encounter. Subscribe to learn about more ways you're misunderstanding how different people's minds work.